Good evening. The time is 8:03. You're listening to me, Rachel Johnson, and also to Nadine Dorries, who is the Culture Secretary, who has joined me in the studio. She's come straight from a barbecue, looking very pink, very fresh, Nadine. Listen, I mean, we all know Nadine Dorries. She's the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. I forgot digital. I know you're very good at digital because you grabbed my phone the other day and you said, delete that picture. And I know how to do it. I'm the digital secretary. Nadine, obviously people know about you, but I don't think they really know the real you. I don't think people know that you're a former nurse, that you're a former health minister, that you've sold millions of books. Your public image is you're always painted as Boris's Boadicea, you're warrior-like, even terrier-like in your defence of the Prime Minister and this government. And if anyone criticises Boris Johnson, it's as if you're going to sink your teeth in their leg. But your role in government is far more important than being a sort of defender of the faith or, the biggest cheerleader in the cabinet, isn't it? You're one of the busiest members of cabinet. You're steering 5 bills through Parliament, from the privatisation of Channel 4, online harms, which I really do want to talk about because I'm worried, as I know lots of people in the media are, about freedom of speech and whether it's going to really put a crimp into what we can say and write with impunity. Obviously, the BBC, we will have to come to. The midterm review is up. You started your job as Cabinet Secretary, Culture Secretary, by saying the BBC may not be here in 10 years' time. And of course, when a certain other presenter told the Prime Minister to shut up, you said, well, that cost the BBC an awful lot of money. That sort of... You didn't say that. OK, well, we'll come to that. You can correct me on that. But you're a Christian. You're also a grandma. You're a human being. And as a woman in public life, a woman in politics, you get an incredible amount of abuse as well. But I want to start with something important, because there's a Nadeem Zahawi in cabinet. So do you want me to say Nadine or Nadine?
So, you know this. There are only 3 women who call me Nadine. My mum, Theresa May, and you.
All right, it's Nadine.
So Nads is fine.
Oh,
that's what your brother calls me, is Nads, as you know. So Nads is fine.
Go Nads then. Let's start with let's start a bit with the politics. Do you feel that everything that happens in politics, there is a tendency to write it off or discredit it as a sort of Remainer plot, like it's the revenge of the Remainers, we never got over it, from Rwanda to the coverage of Partygate? Or do you think that is also spun out of control by an unsympathetic media?
Well, it depends what it is, but what you're referring to. But I would say that over recent weeks, months, things have been very difficult. Coming out of the pandemic has been hard for everybody, and coming out of that and going straight into war in Ukraine, in which we are Ukraine's biggest ally, has meant that things have been very turbulent in Westminster. And I think we're back in the realms of Remain versus Leave, sadly. Many of us thought, and many actually moderate Remainers thought, it's okay, we're over that now, we're looking forward. And many are. But I think there are some who see an opportunity, they hope, before another election, to seize back. There won't be another referendum to leave or to remain. But I think those who are trying to seize power will probably also try to seize a narrative and slow down, reverse some of the decisions and the processes which are taking place. So, yeah, we're back in the world of Remain and Leave, I'm afraid, in a much more subtle way, but also in a, not always a terribly nice way. So,
OK, well, let's pray that we don't have to rerun Leave and Remain again in the next general election.
No, we don't, because we're in a very strong position, both as a government and with our Prime Minister. We are moving forward, delivering right now. Some of those bills that you've talked about in my department right now are delivering on some of the commitments of Brexit. So we are ploughing on, ploughing forward, and that's what we'll continue to do. We're on the high ground and we'll continue to stay there and to move forward.
It's a Sunday night, and would you like to say something about, I mean, I hope not inappropriate, about your faith, Nadine? I mean, you've said at once, I think you gave an interview to...
About 20 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, right then. It was 20 years ago. But you said, I'm not an MP for any reason other than God wants me to be. There's nothing I did that got me here. It's what God did.
So, yeah, that was slightly taken off context.
But it is Sunday night, you know.
It is, untrue. And, I am a believer. I do believe there is God. I do believe, I am a believer.
Okay.
And I do, I was, I'm not somebody who's a Bible basher or, is running off to church every 5 minutes.
Does your faith give you strength through the ups and downs of, the brutal ups and downs of politics?
I'm going to be honest. I don't think it does, no. Because I don't think I have a faith that's that strong.
Okay.
But if I'm trying to look for the good or bad in a situation, then I will probably use a basis of faith in that. But, I'm not that much of a believer that it underpins everything I do. But I do believe that nothing happens by accident, and that there's a plan for all of us and everything. So
look, when you were appointed Culture Secretary, there was a lot of comment about how you were the first person who'd been a celebrity in the jungle to be in the cabinet with that job. Also, the first nurse to be across digital culture, media and sport. But one of my favourite comments was when I think a friend of yours called Stuart Jackson said he thought you would do a lot of good things, but you'd also annoy all the right people. Do you remember when he said that? What do you think the Prime Minister saw in you to put you in that job? Gosh,
I think he knew I'd deliver. So I think he knew whatever challenge he set me, I would deliver for him. And I think he knew that to get things done in Westminster sometimes is, you've got to find a ways round and through. And he probably knew I wasn't someone who's going to kind of like just go down the road of process and go, oh, well, we can't do that, never mind. That I'd try and box through and find ways around things. And I think he knew I was going to deliver. And I'm proud to say, in the 9 months that we've been there, we truly have delivered. We are knocking it out the park in my department and some of the bills that we're delivering and some of the work we're doing, not only in data reform and online safety, but in the sale of Channel 4 and in, thank goodness that we froze the BBC licence fee. It was an absolute commitment to do that. We could not, trying to keep people's bills down at a time when people are seriously suffering with the cost of living crisis was something we had to achieve. So, there's lots of work going on. And, we're one of the smallest departments in Whitehall. But what's really great about my department is that the civil servants who work there they love the challenge too. And they are totally up for it in what we need to deliver. And it's really exciting to be in a department with 2,000 people who are all working for the same goals and the same path. And that's really exciting.
I'm sure we're going to get questions about the BBC. Obviously, we are a commercial broadcaster. We don't have any public funding at all, let alone a licence fee for our listeners and our callers. But I saw you front and centre during the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, which was orchestrated and managed and transmitted
between my department and the royal household. That's who organised it over years.
And I know you did incredible. It was an incredible job. What would you say to people who say there's already been a 30% cut in real terms in the budget of the state broadcaster? and you're putting at risk its ability to lay on huge state occasions, national occasions like that, if you do freeze the licence fee rather than uprate it in line with inflation. And it is only a matter of, I think, something like 40p per household per day. Is it not good value for money?
So what I would say was that the BBC receives £3.7 billion worth of funding, and the National Audit Office itself said there was scope within that funding remit to make changes and to make savings. So I would say that's not the case. I would also say they did a great job, the BBC, and they do a fantastic job, particularly at the Jubilee and the concert. It was just fantastic. But there is room in that massive budget. And what I would say to you, Rachel, is you quote that it's like, whatever per household. But, 76% of all criminal convictions for non-payment of the licence fee are women. And of all women's convictions, all of them put together, 30% are for non-payment of the licence fee. And, why is that? That's because women take responsibility. It's their name on the rent books. It's their name on the mortgage. They're the ones who take responsibility for the kids. And I think a system of fee for paying, just because you own a television set, which discriminates so heavily against women, is something which needs to be looked at. That's why we're having a review of the BBC licence fee. But also, it's £179 now. That you pay that whether you're on benefits, whether you're a low earner, or whether you're a multimillionaire. It's not a fair tax; it's a regressive tax.
Okay.
And so it was long time, that a system which was put in place 100 years ago was looked at. What was put in place many, many years ago, I think it was 1945-6, when the system we have now was put in place. We've moved on, for goodness sake. Nothing that was put in place then barely is still standing in terms of policy. Of course it's time we look at, is it fair, and does it work in the way we want it to? And I would say that if 76% of all the convictions for non-payment of the licence fee are women, then no, it's not fair.
When I last interviewed you at length, you'd only just taken up your job, and you told me a hilarious story about how you're having your hair done in the House of Commons hairdressing salon, and it was during the reshuffle, and you looked at your phone and you said, "Oh, I've got to go to Downing Street. I think you were health minister at the time," and you thought, I think I'll probably be sacked. And you said that the woman doing your hair said, "Don't be ridiculous, Nadine. You're going to get a promotion." So, how did you feel when you got that promotion? There's a lovely picture of you beaming, and I think I've got to ask, and maybe I'm the only person who can ask. You do look at my brother in a particular way. I'm sure listeners have seen the memes.
Oh my God, I've had that
of you
so many times.
I've seen the adoring memes. Nadine, I've asked you
I
what
look at
he
Keir
saw in you.
Starmer in the same way, and no one ever does memes of that, do they?
No, but I've asked you what he saw in you. What do you see in him?
God, well, first of all, I don't fancy your brother. So just in case you're going to ask me that question next, not a bit. But do I see somebody?
He'll be gutted.
Oh, I do. I think he knows. Do I see someone who had the ability? I was the very first MP, probably the first person ever to write an article in a Sunday newspaper.
2012. No, Conservative Home Blog, you did it as well.
No, it wasn't. It was the Mail on Sunday. It was 2012. And I said, Boris is our witty winner, and he is going to unite the Conservative Party, and he will be the next person to give us the majority that we need to get the things done that needed to be done. That was in 2012. I've always seen the potential in him. It was absolutely obvious he was always going to be the person who got the Conservatives the kind of majority they deserved, and would also have the radical agenda we needed to get things done that needed to be done.
Right, to your calls, but I'm with the Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, 0345 606 0973. You're listening to Rachel Johnson on LBC. The time is 8:18.
This is LBC. Rachel Johnson on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Welcome back. Let's go straight to Cindy for our first call to Nadine Dorries, the Culture Secretary. Cindy in Wellingborough.
Good evening, Rachel. Good evening, Nadine. I never knew that.
That's four of you now.
Wonder if you can help me out. This licence fee, I'm in favour of it being scrapped for many of the reasons you've mentioned. But how would it work if it was scrapped? Would we end up with a system where we paid per programme viewed or per episode of a series? And how would box sets work, that kind of thing? Have you given any thought to that? And have they shared any info with you?
Hi, Cindy. So we're about to launch a review of the licence fee and how it would look in the future. So I have absolutely no position on that at the moment. We're going out to consultation. We're going to be talking to everybody and members of the public. Cindy, you'll have a chance to respond. But we're looking at a number of options. There are many ways. You know, Germany doesn't have a licence fee anymore. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's added onto people's council tax. So those who are wealthier with higher council tax pay, and those who don't pay council tax or on benefits or don't pay council larger amounts pay less. I have no idea. I want to look at the options that are put forward, and obviously the BBC will be involved in that, and they'll be able to put their case forward as well. But the way it's working, it's just time for change, Cindy. The way it works now just isn't working.
Thank you, Cindy. Let's go to Bournemouth. Harry's a new caller. Harry.
Good evening. I'm 20, and a lot of people my age seem to be obsessed with social media apps like TikTok and Snapchat, which I personally don't see the appeal of. I think a lot of people might be addicted. Nadine, do you think that these sorts of apps should be encouraged to be used by young people?
So, no, Harry, I don't think they should be encouraged, but I think, we've all got freedom of choice. Anybody who wants to be able to use them should be able to. But that's why we're bringing forward the online safety bill into Parliament, because the bigger problem is, Harry, not people becoming addicted to them or spending too much time on them, although some of that is an issue in itself. But it's that there are actually dangers, particularly for children and for young people online, due for a number of reasons, but mainly due to harmful algorithms and online bullying and other things. So what we're doing is bringing forward a bill to make those big platforms that you've just mentioned, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok and others, behave in a way in the UK which is more responsible. And what we're going to do is make the UK the safest place for people to go online. So we want people to have the choice about what they do. We don't want to police what people do in terms of how they engage with social media, but we want to make it safe for them to do so. But you're quite right to be concerned. That's why we're bringing out the bill.
Thank you, Harry. I mean, in my view, young people need no encouragement to jump onto social media apps like TikTok. And in fact, Nadine, I should say, you've just done a rap on TikTok, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go to Plymouth. What's your question, Dan?
Hi there. I am legally licence free and just don't watch the BBC. Nothing against them. What protections will be put in place for those like me who are legally licence free? Because if it's attached to the council tax, like in Germany, then that's £159 that I would be paying that I'm not at the moment.
So, Dan, as I said, we're about to conduct a review, and the considerations that you've raised, all considerations will be part of the consultation. And we don't have I have no position at this point in time. I don't know. We're about to start the review. It's going to be fairly huge. It's probably going to take the best part of a year. But all I can say is that at the end of that review, whatever happens will be fairer than what happens now.
That's very clear. Thanks, Nadine. And to North Yorkshire, let's get Paul's question, which I think is about another broadcaster. What is it?
Yeah,
what's your question to the Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, please, Paul?
Good evening, Rachel. Good evening, Secretary of State. Channel 4 privatisation. Will the channel still give an opportunity for new talent? such as the comedians, the Last Leg Boys, who made such a hit out of a satire show based on disability.
Hi, Paul. So, of course, what we're doing with the sale of Channel 4 is that there's a kind of narrative at the moment which has developed amongst people who are opposed to the sale of Channel 4, who seem to be able to give the impression that a sale of Channel 4 means the end of Channel 4. And it actually is completely untrue. Sale of Channel 4 is about saving Channel 4. And the reason why we're selling Channel 4 is because it's state-owned, and Channel 4 wants to raise funding in order to make more of that great content, encourage more of those comedians that you've mentioned. And in order to do that, we need to set Channel 4 free in order to raise the investment that it requires. So Channel 4 will still be there. It'll be, I would imagine, a bigger and better Channel 4. And we're selling it to save it. So yes, more independent content and distinctive British content and all of those edgy programmes they make that they do so well that you obviously enjoy too.
Paul, can I add another question to yours, which is, it's state-owned, but Channel 4's never been state-funded, and it actually turned a record profit last year, I think, of around £1 billion, Nadine. So in a way, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You aren't actually saving the channel by selling it, because it was doing very well. And I think Paul mentioned the last leg. I mean, why would a private owner put on the Paralympics?
So because they have that's listings, and there's a choice of that. They bid for that with other. But just let me correct two things that you said there, Rachel. So yes, Channel 4 has done quite well in the past year. There are a number of reasons for that, actually, which we don't have time to go into here. But that's why it's the right time to sell it now. And another reason why we're selling it, which I didn't think we were going to go into this deep, but Channel 4 is dependent on linear advertising. It only has one source of revenue, and that is linear advertising, which is going like this.
Nadine Dorries showed a graph steeply declining with her biro.
So those advertisers are now moving online. Netflix are now about to take on advertising too. It's going to be spread even thinner. We've got Paramount who are launching streaming channels this year, spread even thinner again. And Channel 4 as a business model, and you say it doesn't get state funding, actually what it does get is borrowings from the state. So if Channel 4 got into difficulty, there's only one place it can go to raise money. That's to the government. It's our job to bail Channel 4 out when anything happens.
Right.
And it has borrowed in the past. But Channel 4 is a business that pays 100% and receives nothing back. There is no business model. It pays for the content that it uses, The Last Leg and others. It can't resell them. It can't, because of the publisher type model that it has of independent content. It can't sell that content. So there's no business model in the world that sees its stream of revenue decreasing, pays 100% to have the content made, and then makes no profit from that content. It's a bad business model, and I'm afraid the broadcasting landscape in which we operate, now that we have streaming, now that we have gigabit going into people's homes, which will give them the opportunity to decide even further what they watch and how they watch it, just doesn't bode well for the future for Channel 4.
Just very quickly, before I read out a text, is it going to be possible, though, to protect the remit when you do sell Channel 4 so that it is distinctive, inclusive, diverse and all those things?
We've already set that out, publishing the media white paper up next, which we published a few weeks ago. Distinctive British content, that's what we want Channel 4 to keep making. It's in there. It will still be a public service broadcaster. All those things that make Channel 4 great are in the broadcasting white paper.
Right, well, thank you for that, Nadine. More of your calls after the break. You're listening to Rachel Johnson and Nadine Dorries, and the time is 8:29.
The Transport Secretary says Britain's biggest rail union's been gunning for strikes, accusing the RMT of punishing millions of innocent people. Industrial action set to take place on Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Union leaders are also seeking urgent talks over the future of railway ticket offices amid rumours of mass closures. The Rail Delivery Group says no decision's been made, but newspaper reports suggest plans are in place to close every office in England from September. And the new head of the British Army says troops should be preparing to fight in Europe once again. General Sir Patrick Sanders says UK forces must be capable of fighting alongside allies and defeating Russia in battle. LBC weather, any rain in the south dying out tonight, although pretty dry elsewhere. Chilly in the northwest though, with a low of 4 degrees.
This is LBC. This is LBC with Rachel Johnson. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850.
Time is 8:32 and we're taking your calls. Well, Nadine Dorries, Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport is, and she's also, I forgot to say, the Conservative MP for Mid-Bedfordshire. Sorry about that, Nadine. I just want to read this text because I think it leads into a question, which is from Alex in Dorchester. Sorry to ask this, Nadine, but it feels like yours and the government's desire to privatise Channel 4 comes from a place of them reporting on the news, which at times has been unfavourable to the Conservative Party. I'm a Tory, and Channel 4 is arguably Thatcher's biggest achievement. Please tell me and others that what I have asked you is not true.
So you're right. Channel 4 was Margaret Thatcher's idea. It was also Margaret Thatcher's idea to sell it in 1988. And because she decided then that its work was done. So although she decided to found Channel 4, and you know that decision that she made in 1988 to sell it but she found the forces of conservatism against her, is even more so the case now. And you know, it's not ideological. You know, I have said that Channel 4 sometimes doesn't do itself any favours, but I couldn't care less what they report on the news. If anyone listened or took too much notice of what Channel 4 says on the news and took it to heart, we wouldn't have an 83-seat majority in Parliament. So, you know, am I worried about Channel 4 News? Is that why I'm selling it? No, I honestly don't give a fig. When its anchor goes around shouting, you know, F the Tories, am I allowed to say that? Then it doesn't really help. But, you know, again, we went on and won an 83-seat majority. So it isn't ideological. I actually like Channel 4. I watch. And in fact, to be honest, if I'm going to watch anything on linear TV these days, it's quite often Channel 4.
What do you watch on Channel 4?
Well, I just said this a few weeks actually. We watched
Gogglebox.
Gogglebox. I do.
Yeah,
I
you're
do
gonna
love
say that.
Gogglebox, but also First Dates is quite funny.
I bet.
So watched that the other night.
As long as it's not Naked Attraction.
not
Nadine,
watched
I've got
that.
a quick question I want to squeeze in of my own because it's radio related, quite a granular one. One of the things I know worrying the industry, not just commercial, also the BBC, is your policy on smart speakers. And a third of people own an Alexa or another smart speaker now. And you can say, you know, play whatever station it is you want. But there's now nothing in the bill that's going through to stop the big tech companies limiting or even blocking access, immediate access to that content on smart speakers and those platforms, which this is something that you have sorted out for TV. Where are we on actually making it as easy for consumers to access radio as it is for consumers to access TV?
So it wasn't in the broadcasting white paper. It should have been. And we're working on that. I mean, we're talking to a number of people within the independent radio sector. It's important that it gets back in by the time the media bill comes to Parliament.
Okay, which is, do we know what's the time frame?
So we're hoping the bill gets to Parliament because it's also the same bill that's we're using to sell Channel 4. So we're hoping it will be within Parliament within the next few weeks.
Okay. I think we may have a few calls on non-media now. So let's go to Leicester. And Nicola has a question for you, Nadine.
Oh, hi. I've got a question about women's sport. Today, the International Federation for Swimming announced that transgender women would no longer be eligible to compete in female swimming events. And they said that this was because trans women have a male advantage and it's unfair on women. So I'm just wondering what Nadine thought about that latest news and whether she'll be encouraging sports in the UK to now do the same.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the right decision that they've reached. And I am going to encourage other sports. In fact, we've recently developed a policy within my department. I've been of the opinion that FINA came to today for a long time and have discussed this with my own department and established a policy. And we're about to have a round table with all of the sports governing bodies. It is just unacceptable that trans women compete in women's sport. If you have been through puberty, you cannot reverse the size of your feet, the length of your femur, the density of your bone, your muscle strength, the size of your hand. There is nothing that you can reverse once you have been through puberty. And they've taken the right decision. And also, you know, it's important that those trans women who want to compete can compete and that they can do so fairly. And I would just say the fairness should always trump inclusion as a principle. And ensuring that those trans women have their own category to compete in is important. But no one who's been through puberty should be allowed to compete as a man and then becomes trans woman. And, you know, and I just want to say, I totally support trans women in this because some of the approbation, the public scorn that they receive because they're competing in women's sport is, you know, can't be very good for them. And they should be able to compete in their own category. And so, yeah, that's where I am on that. And I'm meeting shortly with roundtables to try and get everybody into the same place.
So what you're saying is that swimming's taken a position. Do you think every sport that has trans women currently competing should also take a position, or should there be should sport as a whole decide?
No, so, you know, many sporting bodies receive government funding, and it's a case where I think things have actually come to a head, both in swimming and cycling and in other sports. And, you know, if you're born biologically female or you're born biologically male, you cannot change that. You cannot change your biology. You can trans to be a woman or trans to be a man. And, you know, the government will support you and give you all the love and support you need to get you to that place. But you can't compete in the sport of the gender that you were not born in. You just can't do that.
With very few exceptions like archery, equestrianism, you know, things like that, which are pretty unisex in terms of physical abilities between the sexes.
So what I would say is that that where it's more important is elite sport and qualifying sport. You know, in community sports, fun rides, you know, that kind of thing, that's all fine. And, you know, fun cycles where a whole community is involved, you know, that's not the issue. The issue is qualifiers and elite sport, where, you know, women train for years to become, you know, a cyclist or a swimmer or a runner or whatever, and then find themselves suddenly with somebody who's been through puberty and has a huge advantage over them that they just can't compete against. That is unfair. And inclusion, the principle of inclusion, can never trump fairness. And that's why every sport has to get itself into a place where it has a policy which equates to the one which which FINA have announced today, and which I think British Cycling are looking at too. They need to get to that place.
Thank you for that clear answer. Let's go to Joe in Norwich. What's your question to the Secretary of State, Joe?
Good evening, Rachel and Nadine. My question is, given Lord Gate, the advisor on the Ministerial Code's resignation, who should replace him? And if because the position is so ridiculous that it's left vacant, should it be left vacant?
Hi, Joe. Well, you call him Lord Guy. I think the rest of the country had never even heard his name before and used to call him Lord Gedit. And I don't think they give a fig who replaces him or even who he was or what he did. It's a bit of a bizarre one, isn't it? Someone who wasn't elected, who was resigned. Everybody thought for 24 hours he was going to resign over something to do that was compromise the Prime Minister, was suddenly blindsided by the fact that it was something to do with steel tariffs. And so I suppose the substance of your question is who should replace him? I don't know, actually, and I don't think it should be one individual, because the whole, you know, Lord Gate, sorry, I call him Lord Gate.
Gate.
Yeah. Actually, most people up north don't call him Lord Gate and don't know who he is. But he complained so often about the amount of work that he had to do that I don't think one person can probably do the job.
Maybe this government kept him busy. This government kept him very occupied, Nadine. So you don't think that the Cabinet and the Prime Minister need I mean, since when have we had an ethics advisor? Is it quite a new position?
I have no idea.
No, well, OK. I think we have an answer to
ridiculous.
your question, Joe, which is that we don't need to replace Lord Gate. I've got a text from Tina in Hereford, and it's for Nadine. Now that the vote of no confidence has passed, do you feel as though the Conservative Party is healing its divisions? Or is there still a long way to go for unity?
So, it's very much so, I think. You know, there's everybody, I think, in every walk of life has experienced a kind of post-pandemic meltdown in some way. And I don't think we've been unique in that in the Conservative Party. But yeah, I was glad the vote of confidence took place. I've spoken to a number of MPs, actually, who voted against the Prime Minister. One who told me that he cried that he almost cried. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done. Wished he hadn't done it. And I think it's been almost cathartic in its own way. And I think the party definitely is. That obviously, you know, Westminster, men in both parties, you know, you can see people moving over in Labour against Keir Starmer at the moment. And I say men because it is particularly unique amongst men. There are a small number who actually think Boris stole their job and that they should be the people leading the party and that they would have got an 83 majority and that they should be taking over. And they do look in a shaving mirror in the mornings and go, it should be you. And,
come on, Nadine, who are
this.
you talking about? We're all friends here.
So there are always going to be those individuals. There's always going to be, you know, those people who think that they should lead the Conservative Party and those people who think they should be leading the Labour Party. But as far as the Conservative Party is concerned, I think it definitely is now united. And I think there's so much legislation about to go through Westminster. I think everybody's working as a team and getting on with that now.
OK, well, Felix, what would you like to ask Nadine?
Yeah, you're publicly a staunch defender of Boris Johnson. Since joining the Cabinet, what are some things you've disagreed with the Prime Minister on?
There's been a number of things that I've disagreed with the Prime Minister on. Those conversations obviously will remain private, but I don't hesitate to text him afterwards and let him know I was right. So
Trying to think what they are.
Actually, they're usually only small things. But yeah, we do disagree. But the point of cabinet really is that we do have those discussions, and things are bashed out on the table. So, and that's what happens on a Tuesday morning. So, although there may be things, I've got to say though, when I say that there are things that we've disagreed on, I'm talking tiny stuff. I've got to say, on all the big stuff, he gets it right every time. Whether it's taking us completely out of restrictions, there was a lot of opposition to that. And it was absolutely the right thing to do, because it's the only way we can weather these global economic tremors that are taking place at the moment. Inflation just isn't a UK issue. It's EU, US, it's across the world, it's global. Post-pandemic, now in a war. Being the country that had the first vaccine, the first country to put jabs in people's arms, furlough, keeping people in their jobs, he takes all the big decisions and gets them all absolutely right. Have I disagreed with the Prime Minister on any of those? No. Has he got every single one right? He has. And I have to say, sometimes you kind of think, yeah, okay, lifting us out of all restrictions, but he was absolutely right. It was the right thing to do.
You have your answer there. Right, more of your calls with Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries after the break. Call 0345 6060 973. You're listening to Rachel Johnson on LBC. The time is 8:45.
LBC. Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Boris Johnson, we are soon going to hear about tax cuts. There will be a joint appearance between you and your colleague Rishi Sunak. When are we going to hear more?
We're bringing in tax cuts as fast as we can, but what we've also got to do is look after people in a tough time.
The flight due to take people to Rwanda. Is Prince Charles wrong when he says it's appalling? How come you know better than he?
I do think that it's the job of government to stop people breaking the law and to support people who are doing the right thing. That's what we're doing.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC. Rachel Johnson on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Welcome back. Text from Harriet in Oxford to the Secretary of State, and she asks, "Good evening, Minister. You recently intervened to protect the monument of Cecil Rhodes at Oxford. Why did you do this? Do you not acknowledge that the bad things this imperialist did to the people of Southern Africa, why is that not enough for the statue to be taken down?" Nadine.
Well, actually, it's the plaque that I'm listing to Cecil Rhodes, which I sanctioned last week. The statue, I think, can only be moved with Department of Levelling Up's. I think that comes under them. But, our policy is to retain and explain. I don't see what is to be gained by removing statues or plaques, because how do you prevent mistakes happening in the future? And how do you explain to people that what we went through and the position where we are now? So I took the decision to list the plaque on the basis that retain and explain is the best policy. And that, where would it stop if we went around removing all plaques and all statues? And how would anybody know our history, good and bad? I think we have to acknowledge the bad. And rather than just try and, chuck it in a dock or erase it, it needs to stay there so that we can see and learn by what that bad history was.
Does the plaque actually say much more than Cecil Rhodes and his dates, though? Does it actually explain who he was?
No, I don't think it does. I can't remember.
Okay.
Rachel, I took the decision a few weeks ago.
I know that the National Trust puts out additional interpretation so that you don't have to take something down, you can add something. Yeah. But look, we've got such a full switchboard. Let's go to Plymouth, and Terry has a question. Terry, female.
Terry Portman.
Sorry,
I am a female.
You are a female, and we've been talking about women in sport, so I thought I might as well say you're a female. What's your question to the Secretary of State, Terry?
So fishing was the poster child of Brexit, and it's been an absolute disaster for them. So are you actually going to get on as a government and give some meaningful support, or are you just going to dump it like a bad date?
So, hi, Terry. Dump it like a bad date. Long time since I did that. But I don't think it's... Well, I don't know. So, Terry, I don't have a fishing constituency. And it is George Eustace as a policy area. But what I do know is that George is working. I know the Prime Minister was down in Cornwall twice in the past 2 weeks. And I know George Eustace is working very hard with the fishing community and working with them. It's been difficult, Terry, but not just, I hope you understand, not because of UK government policy, but because also of the interactions with other countries too. But I do know that George is working hard on this, and I hope it's resolved shortly.
Well, lots more calls to squeeze in. Let's go to, I think it was Eli in Edmonton. Eli, what's your question for Nadine, please?
My question is, you said that Mr. Johnson's made all the right decisions and the big decisions. What's your opinion of his decision to get rid of Mr. Cummings?
It's Toby.
Sorry? Hello?
Sorry, this is a question from Eli. Sorry, that was my mistake. This is a question from Eli. Was it right to get rid of Dom Cummings, Nadine?
Gosh, yes. At the time, yes, definitely. I think, everybody, Dom did some good work in the early days. He did good work with Vote Leave. But I think at the time, the working relationship between the Prime Minister, Dominic, and those working Number 10 had probably become untenable. And like with any working relationship, particularly in a place like Number 10 where it's really important, it was, you have to concentrate on delivery and the job in hand. And I think it was probably time for him to go, yeah.
Right, that's Eli in Edmonton. And to Warwickshire, George, your question is? George? Can you hear me, George in Warwickshire? OK, let's go to Watford. Ibrahim, what's your question?
Hi there.
Hi there.
I just want to ask Secretary of State, I know you're really passionate about the online safety bill, and I think a lot of things which you're doing is very good. But on this topic of freedom of expression, I know you've been trying some protections within the bill in the form that companies will have to have an appeal system. But do you not think that the fact that there's no statutory timeline as to when those companies have to respond, unlike the Data Protection Act, means that there's no real teeth for enforcement, and actually the political debate will move on by the time companies begin to respond to those appeals?
Ibrahim, no. So the protections are in. So it is a big and complex bill, and it's hard for me to work out there whether you were talking about protections for individuals or journalists particularly. So just let me give you an example which might help, I hope, to illustrate some of the differences that we're making. So first of all, when I ask anybody who tells me that the online safety bill compromises freedom of speech, and I ask them, have you read the bill? They all say no. And so what I would say to anybody who thinks that the bill compromises freedom of speech, please read it, because we've put in extra protections to guarantee freedom of speech. In fact, we have gone over and above. The Miscommunications Act 2003 actually did compromise and has compromised freedom of speech, and we've gone better than that to make sure that it doesn't. But on freedom of appeal, which I think is what you're talking about. So journalistic content or individual content, if an online platform takes down, let me think of something that you could, say the trans debate, you had a point of view on trans women taking part in women's sports, and you found that had been taken down. Well, what the online safety bill does is say, well, actually, that's part of public debate. It shouldn't be taken down at all. It's democratic debate. And so we're trying to preserve what is democratic content. And in terms of having it taken down, there will be it now. They just take it down. You have no appeal. They don't even respond to you. You don't know what it is that you've done. And we're saying it has to remain up. This is additional amendments coming forward in the bill, that the content has to remain up during a period of appeal, and they can't just take content down without stating why, and that content demonstrating that content breached guidelines in the bill, and democratic content like, taking part in the trans sports debate does not count, because that is actually public democratic debate.
Thank you. I've got a text from Ahmed in York who asks, why was your government incapable of sending migrants to Rwanda this week like Priti Patel said you would, and why now are we toying with the idea of leaving the EHRC, an organisation separate from the EU that Churchill helped to found and that still has British lawyers?
So it was a EHRC judge who decided that certain people on that flight, it's not the UK government. We were absolutely determined it should take off. But the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, I think it was an out-of-hours judge, made a ruling that we couldn't. So it wasn't the government, but I know that Priti and the government, we are working. She is working. We are working to find ways around that. And I think there have to be ways. Our elected judges, our politicians, that's how our democracy works. We have to find a way around working with this. But just let me say that nothing that we did in that policy was unlawful. And the judge in the European Court of Human Rights did not find anything unlawful about the policy for that flight to take off to Rwanda. It was certain individuals that the judge found against on that ruling.
Right. Well, we got another question, I think, another one on Channel 4 from Gillian in Mitcham. What's your question, Gillian?
Right. Channel 4 does not receive any public funding, so why are you trying to destroy it?
Well, I'm doing the opposite of that. We're selling Channel 4 to save it. And when you say it doesn't receive any public funding, you're absolutely right. On a daily basis, it doesn't. But it is owned by the government. It's owned by the state, And if Channel 4 gets into trouble, it's the taxpayer who would have to bail Channel 4 out. And Channel 4 itself wants to borrow money. It wants to raise investment. And we as the state cannot be liable for that investment. You, me, the taxpayer, can't say, yes, Channel 4, you go you go and raise £1 billion, and if it all goes wrong, we'll bail it out. We can't do that. And so we're selling Channel 4 to set it free, to allow it to raise the investment that it wants to raise, to make that great content and to make it bigger and better. So we're selling Channel 4 to save it, not to destroy it.
Thank you very much for all your time this evening. That was Nadine Dorries, who was taking your calls for a whole hour. And I should actually ask Mrs. Dorries to stay, as she was once Minister for Health and told me that being a nurse was even more valuable to you than being an MP. Do you remember you saying that?
Yeah.
Because in the next hour, I want to talk about women's health. As the government appoints its first women's health ambassador for England. Do we need one? I feel as if I've heard nothing but the menopause for months. Not that I'm complaining. Have you had trouble accessing what you need in terms of your healthcare needs as a woman or a girl? Is there a gender health gap as well as a gender pay gap? Have you had suboptimal treatment in the NHS because of your sex and gender? Why do we need a women's health czar, or don't we? Call me on 0345 6060 973, text 84850 or tweet at LBC. And thank you very much, Nadine Dorries.
And thank you.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, the Transport Secretary says Britain's biggest rail union's been gunning for strikes, accusing the RMT of punishing millions of innocent people. The unions defended the walkouts, though, which will be taking place on Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday, saying it had no choice. It says talks broke